Welcome to Fueling Conversations, a sport nutrition education network podcast with Dr. James Fleming. In today's episode, I'm speaking with Simone Benedetti, a leading sports nutritionist with experience across football and elite cycling. Simone takes us through his journey, from studying dietetics and human nutrition in Italy, to working in elite sports including AFC Wimbledon, Northampton Town, Ineos and Red Bull Bora's cycling team. We'll explore the realities of working in professional cycling, from the demands of travelling and training camps to the importance of individualised nutrition plans. He also shares insights into managing athlete weight, debunking nutrition myths, and the challenges and rewards of working in elite sports. Plus, if you're an aspiring sports nutritionist, Simone offers invaluable advice on breaking into the industry. Stay tuned for an insightful conversation packed with practical take-homes. Let's get started. Hi Simone, thanks so much for joining me. Excited to have you on as an ex-colleague during our glory days at St Mary's. Do you mind starting us off by kind of introducing yourself and letting us know what your background is and where you are today?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you very much, James. Very nice to see your face in this situation again. So I did my BSc and Masters in Italy in dietetics and the human nutrition science, and then during my Masters where I developed the passion for sports and nutrition. So I then did a postgrad diploma still in Italy. But then I found I was to expand a little bit my knowledge. So I decided to move to the UK, where I was fortunate enough to gain a full-time PhD scholarship at Kingston University, where I did my PhD. So that is a bit of my background from the academic point of view. While I was doing my PhD at Kingston, I was looking for applied experience in the field. Unfortunately, Kingston was not able to provide those for PhD students, so I had to be a bit proactive and knock the doors myself. And after knocking quite a few doors, I was able to find an internship with the AFC Wimbledon female, which is a semi-professional football team, alongside working as a dietitian with the NHS. And definitely those two works opened doors, because after that I was able to work as a consultant in professional football for Northampton Town Football Club, which essentially which stays between League One and League Two in the English Football League. And then it was the glorious experience with St Mary's with you, which also was very important professionally, because that is where I grown massively from the knowledge point of view, I would say, but also because that gave me definitely let's say more visibility also, and then that helped for sure to secure the job then in cycling. And now I work with the Red Bull Bora. So, and before that I worked for Ineos Grenadiers. So let's say now this is my third season working in professional cycling. Yeah.
Nice. I think it's always nice to get that context, because people don't always see the journey, and they'll see the title, they'll see you in a fancy Red Bull t-shirt or whatever, and think, oh, how did he get in there? And that's where I want to go. And as I know, speaking to you and knowing you obviously quite well now, that you've been through lots of kind of challenging times financially, academically, professionally, to try to open those doors. And whether you believe it or not, that the industry we're in to get into professional sport is a very competitive one. And we always talk to our students and those aspiring practitioners to go and try and knock on the doors. But how did you get that first exposure to AFC Wimbledon? What was the driving factor behind moving away from dietetics and into sports nutrition?
Yeah, it was essentially me emailing many clubs, and and eventually the coach of that team was very keen to have a chat and then see how I could support the team. But again, as you mentioned, that was after trying many times and being very unsuccessful. So trying to email also directly the head of the nutrition department of the club, so coaches, head of other type of heads, or just going also to conferences. I was trying to connect and make sure if and see if I could have any experience. But again, like, it was very, very difficult to break that, let's say, how do you call, like,
The bubble.
the glass, the bell. So, and then, yeah, if you, I think I was very determined to get that experience, and then eventually I was lucky to get that. Which sometimes you can see that it was like a semi-professional team, no much exposure if you work, for example, for bigger teams. But definitely that was the first step. So it's also important to start. So don't look at how important is that club. I think that will be part um, of your final results. Yeah.
And I think that's a consistent feed that whoever we've spoken to, they've always done an element of kind of internship, right? You learn on the job in a safe environment, and then you take that where you are now. So I guess should we skip forward to the last kind of 2-3 years? Because I still remember it breaks my heart a little bit when you told me, James, I'm going to be leaving. I was like, come on, Simone, we've just formed something good here. But I know you were applying for a number of jobs, not just in cycling, and then you turn around and say, James, I've got a job at Ineos. Can you just explain to those listening what that is? What is Ineos? What is Red Bull? And
Yeah.
what is cycling as well? Because, you know, people like me might say, oh, okay, it's just a Tour de France. But can you just give us a bit of a context behind what you
Sure.
walked in on?
Sure. So, yeah, we're talking about the elite cycling. So comparing in football, so this would be, for example, the Premier League. And Ineos historically is probably the most successful team in the World Tour scenario. So they won most the Tour de France, as you just mentioned. And for me was, yeah, a very good opportunity because yes, I was looking actually for like working in applied sport in elite environment, but at the same time also there was an element to keep let's say educating the athletes. So I think I was combining the two elements, education and also working in the applied sport. And Bora from last year also became Red Bull, and yeah, so this is a team that has very big goals, big ambitions, and this is an opportunity that came up. And as soon as I know the team uh, has these big ambitions, also he's led from Asker Geokendrup. So he's the director of sport strategy, but also the head of nutrition department. So that also it was a good opportunity to keep learning from one of the best in the field. And in terms of what we do is, so yeah, you consider that we have the World Tour team, which is like if we want to compare in football, is like the first team, and then we have the development team, which is about 15 riders. So the first team is a 30 riders, and the development team, the young riders are 15. And so we need to look after 45 people pretty much. And so we are a group of 4 full-time nutritionists. Then we have Asker as head. Then we have two more nutritionists from the APC, so which is the Red Bull Performance Center based in Salzburg, but they help us whenever we need them. And then we got 4 full-time chefs. So it's a team of 11 staff for the nutrition department, which is massive if you compare also with other realities. So as a nutritionist, um, we work individually with the riders. So each of us is assigned a certain number of riders, so you work with them individually, but then you take tasks also beyond that. So when you go to race, you need to make sure that you think everything that is related to nutrition, so the preparation of the race strategy, on off the bike, fueling, planning the menu, liaising with the chef, supplementation, and those kind of things. Yeah, so at the moment also we have a development team that is looked after from also a nutritionist, but we don't have a female team. Other cycling team have it, which means that also maybe that explains why the nutrition team has to be big, because you have to look after a few riders, and clearly if you don't have a good number of nutritionists, probably you can't be as effective as you want to be, no?
And I'm assuming that all of, even including the development, these riders are reasonably well paid, full-time athletes, right? Some of the best in the world. So how many of them have personal chefs, or is that something you have to navigate as well, or is that not part of the kind
Yeah.
of culture in elite cycling?
Yeah, if you talk about the World Tour riders, some of them have a private chef. Also, the how they earn the income became quite also significant compared to previous years. So not comparable still with football, but they have a very good salary. And definitely some of them they pay attention on nutrition. They have a private chef, but I would say majority no. Majority they cook themselves and yeah.
Nice. I think before we delve into kind of more of that day to day, what it looks like working with World Tour teams and things, and kind of the nuts and bolts of, you know, travel, being away from home, what a day looks like in this space.
Yeah.
Can we kind of go back to you on day one Ineos or day one Red Bull, walking into an environment as a non-cyclist? I know since you've joined these teams, you've got lots of lycra and some bikes and things, and I'll be seeing you go around Richmond Park in all this gear, trying to with your Simone Benedetti on the side of your fancy
The
bike.
bike.
But
Yeah.
but can you let us know how that feels? Because from again my experience, although limited, often these environments are people that are either ex-cyclists or, you know, live cycling, and I know that's not necessarily your route on entry.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, when I started with Ineos, zero experience with elite cycling. So, and I see now the difference with Bora, where I had already 2 years working in cycling, and yeah, and how people perceive you, how people see you is completely different. That's for sure. So definitely with Ineos was, um, yeah, I had to gain the trust of everyone because it's a very closed environment. Most of the people working there are coming from, as you said, from cycling, the coaches, the carers. They were cyclists at different levels, but cyclists. So there is a little bit of skepticism on people not coming from that background. So sometimes it's not very simple to break that. But also cycling is opening to that in that way. So you see people coming also from other sports, also physiotherapists coming from rugby, from football. So you see that slowly is opening. So, but yeah, definitely was not easy, I would say, at the beginning, and then slowly I think when you work hard and you show that you know you really care about the riders, and then you really want to do your best, then people slowly trust to start to trust you.
So I
Yeah.
guess like from someone listening into this who's aspiring to get into elite sport, and maybe their tunnel vision thinking this is my sport, this is where I want to go, is there any advice you'd give them if they were to have opportunities that are outside of their kind of traditional trajectory?
100%, because that is yeah, you can be more, you feel definitely more confident working in an environment where you are familiar with, but at the same time you're losing an opportunity to expand your knowledge, to go out of from your out in a new environment, out from your comfort zone. So definitely is something that I recommend. In my case, I gain experience working in team sport, but not much in endurance sports, and definitely now I feel also professionally that I have filled that gap. So, and it's not at the beginning, as we said, it's not that easy because you don't feel really comfortable, but yeah, I think then you paid off for sure.
I think knowing you, the approach you took in terms of, I know for your interview, for one of your interviews, you had to do a presentation, and the amount of time you went into, you know, looking at documentaries, reading around cycling physiology, looking at the latest literature. It's the same process, right? What people are learning in academia, you go and do a full needs analysis, you go and do your homework, you produce something that's visually engaging, you kind of show yourself off, but you show them that you're willing to go the extra mile, so that actually you're not going to be caught up on any of those theoretical considerations. Yes, maybe some of the practical nuances that are associated with cycling and being there and living it might be needs to be brushed up on, but you can learn that quite quickly, right? Being involved in the environment is having the base that you can do off your own back is always going to put you in good stead.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But as you said, I think having the experience also at St. Mary's, that was really important because it's the same principle. Whenever you have to prepare a lecture or a presentation, you want to make sure that everything is prepared. So you investigate, you look at the literature. So it's the same thing. The only thing is you just presenting to a group of athletes instead of students, but you have to use the same also way to engage them. So simple and very concise, which initially I wasn't. I'm not. I don't define myself a very concise person, but yeah, you have to learn because otherwise you lose it to be the engagement. But yes,
And I
so
guess this is a nice transition to talk about what it's like then, really. So I know that, can you talk us about a little bit about the kind of commitments to travel, and then what actually the role of a nutritionist looks like on a typical kind of maybe training camp?
yeah. So we travel. Um, yeah, this year we'll be traveling around 120 days per year, and that will be across all Europe and for races and training camps. So a typical day for the training camp is, well, you can wake up quite early because you can start doing a skin fold, for example, for a rider, and then you go down to the restaurant where the guys will have the breakfast. So you are there, especially now because now we are using also a nutrition app. So everyone is learning to use it, and so we are there just if the riders have any questions about whatever it has been prescribed, and we are there just for the riders to make sure that whatever we prescribed also they get it exactly, and then they go for training. Sometimes we go also for training to have a better understanding also what happened physiologically and what they do. But otherwise, there is always many tasks that you have to do. So you stay in the hotel, and then you start planning um, the rest of the menu planning. You see all the training sessions, so to make sure that the fueling that you allocate for that training session is correct. You might prepare some presentation because in that camp you want to present something to them. You are working on uh, making some SAOPs, especially now we are working a lot on that to make sure that the work that we do, every nutritionist is aligned, and also the other department really understands what we want to do. So yeah, it's let's say it's not just the job of being on the field and be with the rider. There's also other stuff at the behind where you want to organize, you want to structure to make sure that when they go to race, there is like a clear strategy. But at the same time, the task sometimes is you are at a training camp, but then you have riders that, or you are in a race, and then you have riders that maybe are training at home or they are also training in other races. So you need to also to think about other people while you are busy in a race. So it's you have to be sometimes in different locations at the same time.
And how prescriptive are you guys with your riders? Is it that you give them a day by day plan or when on camp, or is that throughout the year? Because I know that, tell me if I'm wrong again, and you maybe expand on this, like the importance of power to weight ratio is something that's key in cycling now.
Yeah. Well, like the weight is a key factor, is a key performance factor in cycling. And in terms of prescribing the nutrition plan, yes, that is something that now we are using a nutrition app where we provide essentially all the targets, and then the app is able to provide to translate those targets in real food. So they just need to open the app and they can see how much carbs, how much pasta, how much chicken they have to eat, and they can see also whether they reach the targets that we prescribed or not. So it's very easy to use from them. That also helps a lot us because when you work with the many people, and then you have to go, yeah, let's say one by one, it's a bit more complicated. So that is, it's a
And then I guess, like, although for those that don't know, Professor James Morton was head of INEOS or head of performance in INEOS, and now you got Professor Asker Jukic, who are some of the best in the business. How do you translate theory and evolving theory into practice? And I mean that probably in regards to pre and during event nutrition, with regards to things like now we're hearing athletes having in excess of 120 grams an hour of carbohydrates, but how much of that is translated from the books, and how much is it from what we see and hear from the athletes and their individual preference and tolerance?
Yeah. Well, like first of all, as you can imagine, you see these people in the conferences, and then you start working with them. Say, "Oh, wow!" And it's for me, it's like having an encyclopedia. Do you call them?
Yeah, encyclopedia. Yeah.
The encyclopedia always next to you, because that is like always, um, yeah, the information that they give you is gold. And in terms of what you asked, so yes, what I'm experiencing now is that uh, one of the I say one of the best ability of Asker is exactly that, being able to translate complicated stuff in very simple stuff. And and you have to do that because you are working with a different department. So it's not just educating the riders, it's also educating and then let the other staff that are supporting the riders uh, what they need to do in a very simple way. So we try to make like the nutrition strategies effective, evidence-based, but at the same time simple to be delivered. And this is something that I have to say I learned a lot while at Ineos, because I was working with the very two good professionals. Um, but now I'm also increasing that knowledge, but also yeah, making those knowledge simple for riders, but also for the staff. And that is because I think Asker is got many years of experience, not just from the academia, but also working in applied sport, and that helps all of us working with him. Yeah.
And how are the athletes in cycling? Because I mean, you've got lots of, I assume, highly driven, quite quite personally driven individuals. I know there's a team behind the team, and there's a science behind, you know, who wins the tour, and it's not just an individual. But how
Yeah.
do you manage that? And would you say that they're all, the buy-ins pretty good, or yeah, how does that look?
Um, well, it's very individual because yeah, it depends on the rider, the belief, and I also say the age, because if you work with a very experienced riders who is like next to retire, is probably still holding the old beliefs of nutrition, while if you work with the very young riders, they are more keen to like learn, and that is an aspect. But I also say it depends. There are people who are very perfectionist, so they listen to everything what you say. Others that for their personality they don't want to be like very robotic, so they prefer to be more left and then just have some guidance. So it really depends about the individual that you're working with, but for sure at this level you don't see any riders that is not taking seriously nutrition. So everyone
Yeah.
is taking seriously. Yeah.
And like you say, you're in a high end, high money, high performance based sport. So ultimately they're paid to perform, aren't they? So um, it's it's an interesting one. And I think that's where the power of being there, right? How important is it that you're there at team meetings, that you've got a presence on the training camp, that you know, show you care, that when they train you're over there and you're seeing it in person, because that aspect of, and that's what I love about these top end sports, is that they actually invest in the relationships between nutritionists and the athletes, which a lot of sports, I know nutrition is still relatively in its infancy in some areas, and money's a key driver. But if we don't enable the nutritionists to build relationships, then what are we able to actually get in terms of buy-in and behavior change? Yeah.
100%. And this is so true. And in cycling, I would say this is more difficult compared to other sports because you don't have the same opportunity to spend the time face to face than in other sports. Because you see them you see some riders at the December training camp, and then maybe you see them after 6 months because you don't, there's not the same, you're not doing the same race stream. Even with your riders. So I work individually with riders, but for example, I won't see them before the end of March. While if you work in football, then every day you go to the training ground and you have the opportunity. So, which doesn't mean that you don't talk to them at all. Is you need to be more. You need to find other ways, but it's so important to build those relationships. So it's yeah, phones, Zoom calls, text. how was today? Did you kick some ass on the race or that kind of things that you like they see that actually, he's thinking about me, it's
Nice.
yeah.
So can we, again, just delve a little bit further into, I suppose, the nitty gritty? What are some of the common misconceptions about performance nutrition in cycling, do you think?
Yeah, for me, like now being in cycling for the third season, I think the main one is looking at the weight or looking at nutrition, simply a tool to lose weight. While we know that nutrition can make or can help these athletes to be better athletes by fueling optimally training and competitions, recover faster, or preventing injuries, whatever. So, and uh, and go back a little bit to the what we were mentioning before about the weight. It is undeniable that in cycling, the weight is a critical factor, especially when climbing, because when you cycle uphill, the gravity is the main force that you need to overcome, and any extra weight or kilo coming from either the bike or the rider is an additional resistance that and you don't want them. And in this space, as you mentioned before, a key performance metric is the power to weight ratio, which essentially tells you how much power a rider is capable to produce relative to his body weight. And clearly, the higher that ratio, and the faster they can be on a climb, the more easily they can accelerate, but also they can sustain the power output for longer. So it's definitely is an advantage. And they know that the way they can optimize that ratio is to reduce the weight, which is true. However, we know that if the weight is not lost properly, if it's lost too quick, if they don't follow the right nutrition, you can hand it up to lose your muscle, and eventually also there's the risk that you lose your power, which is your main tool. So um, they don't see the other part where for some training sessions, high training sessions with high volumes, high intensity, they need to ingest high amounts of calories and carbohydrates to actually be able to tolerate that training sessions and also to promote the adaptations. So again, I still see nutrition simply, okay, I can eat less, I lose weight, instead of seeing nutrition as a tool or mean to achieve those adaptations, to tolerate high the training, to have a better quality of training sessions. So and you need to, as a nutritionist working in cycling, I think this is something that, especially with the like senior riders, I would say they come from an old,
And
style.
do they all have like, do they get hung up on numbers and metrics and weighing themselves and all those things? Is that part of a cultural challenge that you've seen, or you're able to disclose, or is it something that is more about, holistic, how we're feeling and how we're performing, and all of those bigger picture things, as well as, what the
Yeah,
weight is or what the summer skin folds are and those sorts of things?
it's both.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, definitely you need to rely your suggestions on objective data. So, for example, if you are prescribing a weight loss plan, you want to see if the numbers, for example, the watts that he's producing are still okay. So you are in communication with the coach. But at the same time, yeah, it's the feelings. So you want also to know the personal feelings, especially when you start with someone you don't know much about that person. You are prescribing a plan, but we all know that plans are based on calculations, but sometimes they don't match perfectly with the physiology of the individual. So you want to, yeah, having like a big picture, knowing if the numbers are still good, if the feelings of the rider is good, and then like you can say, okay, this plan seems working, and you're also losing weight in with the good rate, so not too much, and so that you can be also more secure that what you do.
And I guess just kind of adding on to that space, it makes me think about the fine balance between energy availability, falling off the bike, injury prevalence, bone health, because there's no weight bearing really when they're on a bike. I know there must be land-based training, but so how conscious are you guys of that, and how do you monitor that, and or have you got any kind of insights you might want to share with regards to injury, bone health, that kind of space? Because it feels like that could be a challenge.
Yeah, this is also another very good point. Um, the cyclists are very fragile in terms of bones. So even like a stupid crashes, they end up in fractures, and this is because we know the bone mineral density in cyclists is uh, most of the times is low. So yeah, there is you want to tackle this from the medical point of view, but also from the training point of view. So definitely about vitamin D supplementation, but also adding on top of the normal training on the bike, also doing some training that there's an impact on the ground. So running, for example. Yeah, however, reality sometimes is a bit different because you can, yeah, in theory, yes, this good approach. However, not always all the coaches, for example, agree on mixing the running training with the cycling training. There is believes that they can, let's say, be detrimental to each other from the physiological point of view. So, but definitely is a concern in cyclists, and that's as a nutritionist we know that we can play a role, even it may be small, but from our side we want to make sure also with the medical department they go also the vitamin D, especially winter time, and also they don't go in energy deficiency for long period of time. So yeah, you plan it if they need to lose weight, but also it's planned and controlled. And
They are flying down those hills, and there are always accidents, aren't there? Like it's part and parcel of it. Like there's going to be crashes at some stages of, the Tour de France or wherever it might be. And I guess that's that's a challenge. Do you guys have access to, or do you use DEXAs? Is that something that's part of your plan, or is that just more reactive space when, as and when?
no, we have every year in at the beginning of the season we do always a DEXA. So that is November time, October, November time, before the season starts. And then is mostly skin fold. So the BMD is assessed pre-season.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Um, Before we move on to a bit of advice and kind of wrapping up a little bit, what would you say is the main challenge when working in cycling as a nutritionist, or the main challenge for cyclists? I suppose there's two questions there.
Yeah. Well, I think for both nutritionists and cyclists, the main challenge is, I would say, logistics, because if we go back to what we were saying before, compared with other sport, like football or rugby, the players and the staff, they live just in one place and every day they go to the training ground. In cycling, staff and riders live in many different locations in Europe. So and this is a challenge because, for example, from the staff point of view, if you want to run educational sessions, you can do that on a regular, let's say not even once a month, as you can do, for example, in other sport. Also, if you want to run a skin fold in football, for example, it can be always you once a month or once every 2 months. Is gonna be the same person doing that. While in cycling, if you're not in that race and it's the time for skin fold, it can be your colleague. So that is and from the rider's point of view, they have to cook, they have to shop themselves. So it's not again like in other sport, you go to the training ground, you go breakfast, you go lunch, and just dinner at home. So in this case, they have to think about everything, shopping, cooking on top of they longer trainings.
How do they manage the volume of food? Because we're hearing, like, it might be anecdotal, but like 8, 9, 10,000 calories worth of food whilst getting through training loads. Are these just animals in terms of being able to eat so much, or is it how much gut training is needed there, or do you see that as a
Yeah.
stepwise progression? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, the let's say the 8-9,000 kilocalories are not very happen. For example, in a Grand Tour, in a Tour de France, you can see the energy expenditure in a day, but on a daily basis, yeah, still high, but they can go from 4,000 to 6,000 kilocalories. And in that case, it is possible also because they ingest a good amount of food on the bike. So let's say they can even reach 2000 kilocalories or 1500 on the bike. So that means that if they go high fueling, if they have like a 5 to 6 hour session or an intensity session, so a good amount of food is also consumed on the bike. So then, as you can see, they
Nice.
don't need to ingest a lot outside.
I know this might be full disclosure, and you might be unable to say this, but what's your go-to for your athletes on a bike? What do they like the most when they're doing those high 2000 calorie consumption numbers?
Well, no, there's no secret. It depends who you're working on. So if you're working on like a training the gut, for example, you want to mimic what they will have in race. So that will be based on gels and carbs bars that we have as a team. Otherwise, if they just do like a regular session, they still stick to some sport nutrition products, but also can be fruit, can be they might make some panini.
All
Also,
these little rice things they make, I've heard there's like sticky rice with like Nutella in there. Is that a myth or is that a real thing?
no, it's a real thing. Yeah, we make Rice Krispies.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we make like a Rice Krispies. So that is the thing. If you think that they have in race 4 or 5 hours, and it is possible for them in the first part of the race, particularly in the first hour, where if the parkour allows it, so if it's quite flat, and this also was I was very surprised when I started, because you can see these guys can have again Rice Krispies, some paninis that are low in fat, more in carbs, so jams, white bread, but still is solid food. So and clearly I define the intestine like as a washing machine, so they are absolutely able to digest that. They are used to that. And then so by it's not just gels and bars, also they have a proper food on the bike.
I remember there was a great picture. I think you showed me when we were both teaching, where there was a tour cyclist that had imposed like a whole bowl of spaghetti bolognese whilst he was cycling or something like that. It's still
Yeah, that was from the past, I think, but I think these guys will be also able to do that with the ability to digest. Yeah.
love it. Love it. So I guess yeah, to finish up, it's been really really good to kind of hear kind of the practical insights and for you to share how you've kind of knocked down some of those barriers, because I can imagine it's quite a daunting place to walk in on a high profile professional environment without really the expertise or perhaps knowledge base to begin with. These environments are fast paced, right? And they're accountable and all these things. So it's nice for you to have shared some of those insights. So I guess for aspiring practitioners or even current practitioners, what kind of guidance would you give to them, just in general? And is there any kind of actionable steps or skills that you would kind of tell them or advise them to focus on?
Well, I say the first one is if you're talking someone that is approaching this um, space, like students, for example. So make sure that you gain the right degrees. So probably BSc, masters, and potentially also PhD, because it became very competitive. You always see more people working in the space with the PhDs. At the same time, I would say builds up a decent networking. So take any opportunities to go to conferences or events and talk with the like people that are relevant in the field, because then at some point they will remember you if you contact them for a job or something. So that also is another thing that I would say is important. Gain work experience. It doesn't matter how important is that club, is that place. At some point, it will pay off anyway. And the last but not least is, I would say, do the opposite what a worried mind tells you, because that probably is the right way to do. It's in these places where maybe you can be afraid of do something, or you think that is too challenging, so the mind will be like sabotaging a little bit, and this is like as a human nature. And I think the best thing to do is just do exactly the opposite what he
I
tells you.
think that's such a powerful bit of advice. And I hope you don't mind me disclosing this, but when people often see and they'll be like, "Oh, there's Simone, he works for so and so," and you're probably going to get people on LinkedIn, messaging you, but they don't see that, there were challenges at INEOS with regards to funding and SIS and all those sorts of things, and there's been periods where you didn't know whether you were going to have a contract or not, and then you having to really hustle. And even before that, when you were at St Mary's, you and your wife were newly married, and you're like, James, I'm going to step away from my secure blanket of St Mary's, which it is relatively, and I want to go into professional sport, knowing full well that that is a leap of faith, really. Firstly, can I get in there? Secondly, is there enough money to sustain my day-to-day life? Because some professional sports don't, and it could have
Yeah.
well been a pay cut for you in many ways. And then there's lots of sacrifice that goes on for those that are in the field that people don't necessarily see, and I think that's important because people often just see the shiny kit and the nice photos and you handing out the energy gels on the finish line or whatever, and I think that's something that I hope you don't mind me sharing, that you're relatively new to this professional space, but I just wanted to.
This is the reality, and that's why I think this can be sustained long term or relatively long term, just if you also accept also the other parts of the job, because it's not just as you said, it's not everything shining. Definitely is a long hours work at night, especially for me now that I have a baby. I have worked like many days after dinner and finishing midnight, 1 o'clock, and then
However,
some
I will say one thing, Simone. I do remember when you sent me a picture and your hotel room had a sauna in it, so or some sort of sauna. That's something. I was like, "What is this? Two beds."
first race within us, yeah.
Yeah, very good. Welcome to the team. I just wanted to step back one point because just conscious that you mentioned about PhD, and I don't disagree that a PhD means that you could potentially have an advantage. I just wondering if you can explore and just tell me personally what you think having a PhD added to your scope of practice as a practitioner, because sometimes people go, well, I'm just going to do a PhD because that's what I want to do, that's what I need to do, and that's not a good enough reason to slog yourself for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. So what is it if someone's doing a PhD that is going to maybe translate to making you a better practitioner, researcher, individual, do you think?
Yeah, well, for sure, it will give you more tools to become a better performer nutritionist. You have more idea, you know how to read the literature, you know how to read the studies, the research, and also, yeah, you learn other skills to self-manage your time and other bits. So I think um but at the same time, yeah, you're right that if you just do it because it's the right thing to do, which I have to be honest, that was exactly my drive. Because when I finished my postgrad diploma, I was very interested in getting more knowledge in sport nutrition. But at the same time, I said, if I go to the UK and I need to compete with people that they are from there, and I know how competitive is this world, I have to offer at least the same thing that other people are already offering, no less. So that was always, even like in the as you said, PhDs long time, and there are always setbacks, and you have to be able to be resilient. And then when I had that, I was always like trying to look long term and say, yeah, I need to finish this, because if I want to, the goal was always clear, so I want to work there, so I want to make sure that I will get there with a PhD. But then so that was the main point. But now I think I'm benefit from what I learned. I wouldn't be able to have that clarity when reading papers, and then, so being able also to, yeah, I was also doing the research myself. So it's also, then you have the opportunity to keep collaborating and being also active in that space. So I think it's if yeah, it's a good thing to do. However, you see many practitioners working in the field, they don't have a PhD. So definitely it's not securing you to have a job in professional sport.
But I think it's really important. That's why I wanted to ask the question, because there's definitely two sides to it, right? You doing a PhD is very academic based space, but it does transfer over and offer value. But I think some people, there is a narrative set in some cases where people feel pressured to do something, and that's not necessarily the right thing to do either. So I think having support and advice and thinking about your plan is an important one. And what worked for you might work for others and may not. So I think, yeah, thanks for answering that one.
I add, like, if you want to do that or if you believe it's the right thing to do, I would say, yeah, try to go to the right place to do that, because that also can dictate, might dictate also your future, your professional future. So like decide which we know that there are units that they can offer like also good placement and stuff. So I think it's not just like taking PhD, but if you have the opportunity, also think mindfully where to do it.
What happens at the end, right? There's got to be an end goal or some sort of strategic planning, and yeah, really good advice. We'll finish up and we'll do a few quick fire questions, or reasonably quick fire questions. First one would be, what's the best piece of career advice that you've received to date? It doesn't have to necessarily be about, you know, performance nutrition, but what would you say the best bit of career advice has been?
Well, I think like we were just talking about resilience. So I had times during my PhD, particularly where I was quite close to say bye-bye and go back to Italy. And then I remember another professor, so was not my supervisor, so talking to him, said, yeah, just think about 20 years time now, and you will definitely regret it. So is don't which is also a little bit what I said before, don't listen to what your mind tells you, because most of the time is not the right suggestion. Is like is the afraid mind that is telling you what to do, while so that is probably the best advice, which is not like a very scientific, but it's more like a, yeah, that what I would say.
Love it. Just one more, which is the practical takeaway. So for listeners looking to apply kind of what we've discussed, or might be working with like lower level cyclists, where do you think they should start? What would you say?
Based on my experience, I would say be very proactive and then knock as many doors as possible, because for sure one of them is waiting for you.
Love that. Love that. And that is a bit of fun one, a bit of tongue in cheek. So would you rather have a private chef cook all your meals all day, or a personal barista make your coffee every day? I know you're Italian, and I know you were drinking a double espresso before we came on here. Espresso, sorry. So what would your choice be?
I say I'm pretty good in making coffee, so I say a private chef. We makes our life easier at home for sure.
Nice, but you get good food when you're away. And the final question, this might be a little offensive for an Italian. Pineapple on a pizza or not?
Definitely not.
Well, thanks so much, Simone, for joining us. And yeah, pleasure to always catch up, and really appreciate the time, because I know how unbelievably busy you are with little one and the new job. But super excited. I'm not looking forward to the day where you walk past me with Asker and Professor James Morton and pretend you don't know me anymore. So I'm clinging on to the idea that you still want to understand who I am before you become too much of a big dog. And I've put my request in early for all the size mediums growing to size larges that I can get.
He's on your way already. He's on your way.
Well, nice to talk to you. Cheers, mate.
Thank you.